Hi, I'm Judy Richards, and I'd like to welcome Senator Kim Thatcher, Republican candidate for Senate District 13. Welcome.
Thank you.
I have a few questions for you today. Tell us what you did for seniors and people with disabilities during your time in office.
Well, one of the more recent things I did, and I don't recommend this, I earned some empathy for people with disabilities and seniors. I had a really bad accident a couple of years ago. I'm still recovering from it, and I was in a skilled nursing home, and I kind of got a front row view to what happens with people who are consigned to those for a long period of time. It's one way to feel young. I mean, I was the youngest one there, but there were situations where I could see that wonderful people helping these seniors and people with disability. But there were some, I would say, were in the wrong profession. And they really needed to have a little bit more empathy, treat others as they would treat themselves or would want their own loved ones treated. And I could see that there's such a difference between being able to stay at home and get care, because I had that too afterwards, and having to be in a facility where you're separated from everybody, and you really don't have that same ability to advocate for yourself, either being on heavy medication or not being in one's own mind. Where my roommate, who was calling for help quite often during the middle of the night, her calls for help seemed to be ignored. Now, I don't know the rest of the story, why they were deciding that she was just maybe a nuisance to them or something, but I felt that having that personalized in-home care with like Oregon Project Independence is so much more preferable, and definitely something that I even feel more strongly about than ever.
Thank you for that insight. Please tell us at least 3 of your positions that would encourage a senior or a people with disabilities to re-elect you.
Well, one of the things I've observed from family members is that pocketbook issues are sacrosanct. You're on a limited income. The reason we had property tax measures go into place, it's in our Constitution, Measure 5 you hear referred to, is because people were getting taxed out of their homes. We do have a program, though it was suspended for a short period of time, called the property tax deferral. And if it wasn't for that, I know my grandmother would have lost her house. And I think this affects women, elderly women, more often, simply because they live longer, and generally speaking, and also because they don't have as much built up for retirement, for pension, because of how the system works. And so when her home has been paid for 20, 30 years, and then property taxes keep creeping up, even with the property tax limitation, they keep going up. If it wasn't for her ability to defer her property taxes, I know she would have lost her home. And I also support Measure 103 that's on the ballot. It's a constitutional amendment that would restrict or prohibit sales taxes on groceries. Necessities like groceries should not ever be subject to sales tax, and I know that there's a push to get sales taxes into Oregon. There have been 9 attempts, so we'll see how the 10th attempt goes. But I also would like to look into homeowners associations, especially when they're dealing with people who have disabilities or they're seniors. There was a situation up in King City where there's a dispute, and she ended up having to use a bucket for her bathroom, and having to take that out, and trying to resolve that is something I think we need to look into.
Yes. Oregon Project Independence is a program that's kept seniors and people with disabilities in their own home, and yet every year proposed funding for OPI is significantly cut. What did you do to protect current funding for OPI, and if re-elected, how would you ensure continued funding for this cost-effective program?
Time and time again, I've had advocates come and visit my office, and the program makes so much more sense than having to send people to a nursing home for so much more money. It's not cost effective at all. So I am definitely for cost effective programs, especially in our government. And there was a bill introduced in 2017. It was Senate Bill 462, and I don't even think it got a hearing, but it would have given a tax credit for those who donated to Oregon Project Independence. And I think that would have been helpful. It would have helped a little bit, get a little bit more investment in the program. And also, having two family members go through somewhat recently a contrast of situations. One ended up in a nursing home. The other relative ended up being able to utilize Project Independence, and seeing the quality of life contrasted between the two, it's just night and day, night and day. And keeping Project Independence and keeping people in their homes for as long as they can is just the only way to go, besides the cost effectiveness of it.
Yes. What will you do on a state level so that seniors and people with disabilities no longer face a lack of accessible and affordable housing?
You know, it's funny, there's a push by cities to get rid of the property tax limitation, and I think a lot of people are forgetting the reasons, one of the big reasons those property tax limitations were put in place. It was because people were losing their homes, people who had already paid for their homes and were facing these horrendous tax bills every month. While on a limited income, that's not doable, not sustainable. And so I would be opposed to further property tax increases, and I would like to be able to help seniors be able to take advantage, more seniors be able to take advantage of the tax deferral program. Also, we have high costs of licensing, regulation. Before shovels even put in the ground to build a home, there's all kinds of costs that are lumped on top. Our urban growth boundary line presents a problem. Our land use system, that needs to be looked at. We have a very complicated and expensive way of building homes that we've put in place in Oregon, and it makes it less affordable to live.
How would you prioritize state funding, including funding that is matched with federal funds for services to an increasing senior and people with disabilities population?
Well, there are a number of things that I wish we would do better at the state of Oregon, and focusing funding on those programs that most efficiently meet the missions that the people of the state of Oregon have given us, and taking care of our elderly and people with disabilities. That's a social contract that we have, and we should be doing it the most efficient way and most beneficial way, and Project Independence comes together and does both of those things. One of the things that we faced during the recession was we had to do across-the-board cuts, because that's what's in the statute, and that doesn't make any sense. When we have to make across-the-board cuts at a certain percentage for each agency, you're not prioritizing. And so we need to prioritize cuts. When we're faced in that situation, we have to prioritize our spending, and we need to perhaps not every year do zero-based budgeting, where we take an agency periodically, strip it down to zero, and rebuild it. Make sure that we are prioritizing and meeting the mission of the agency and best in accomplishing that.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you for your insight today. This is Senator Kim Thatcher, Republican candidate for Senate District 13. Thank you for joining us today.